In the last video, we added some code to get the current user inside the initState method. However, things didn't work out quite as expected and we got an error screen instead. So let's take a look at this and see how we can resolve it. So if we open up the console, we can find out the cause of the error, and I'm just going to read it in full because this is actually a good explanation. So here it says, landing page state.initState returned a future. State.initState must be a void method without an async keyword, and rather than awaiting on asynchronous work directly inside of initState, call a separate method to do this work without awaiting it. Okay, so I think this explanation is quite clear and it's telling us that we shouldn't await for asynchronous work to complete inside initState. So this makes sense because initState is called as part of the widget creation lifecycle. So in here, we shouldn't really do any work that is asynchronous and might take a long time to complete. Okay, so to solve this problem, we are going to create a new asynchronous method. So this will have a return type of type future void, and the method will be called underscore check current user. It will be async, and then we are going to the initState method, we are going to remove the async keyword, and then we're going to cut and paste these two lines inside the check current user method. We are also going to import Dart async because here we are returning a future, and finally we are going to call this method from initState, but this time without awaiting for it to complete. So we're just going to say check current user like this. Okay, so we have followed the suggestions from our error messages over here. So we can now clear the log, and we can also hot restart to see what happens. So now we are onto the home page, and so it means that we have managed to fix our application. So when we start the application, if there is already a current user, it will be retrieved by this method, which is called by initState, and we will then update the user, which in turn will call setState. And because in this case we already had a logged in user, then we can see the home page. Okay, so now our application works correctly when it is restarted and our signing flow is complete. Now, before we move on, I just want to point out one very small detail that I've not explained before. And as you can see, the check current user is an asynchronous method that returns a future. However, when we call it from initState, we don't actually await for it to complete. And in fact, it is entirely up to us to decide if we want to await or not when we call a method that returns a future. So in this case, what we are doing is just calling the method without awaiting for it to return. And this is fine in this case because all we care about is that we call update user after the Firebase current user method returns a value. So the takeaway here is that when we call await, we suspend the execution of our code until the future returns, but we don't have to call await if we don't want to. Okay, so we are now ready to continue, and we'll do that in the next video.